My name is Bonnie Clark, 62 years old, and I never thought my son's wife would try to kill me for money. That day still haunts me. Natalie's cold eyes as she deliberately pushed me down the stairs, the crack of my arm breaking the searing pain. What she didn't know was that my newly installed security system caught everything. As I lay there in agony, cameras were silently recording the truth that would ultimately destroy the perfect life she thought she was building. I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you're settled in, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more true stories of survival and justice. Trust me, you'll want to see how karma came full circle in this family tragedy. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs, but love for my son blinded me to what was happening right before my eyes. Michael was my whole world from the moment he was born. When my husband Jack died of a sudden heart attack when Michael was just 10, it was only the two of us against the world. I worked double shifts as a nurse to provide for us to make sure Michael had everything he needed: good schools, braces for his teeth, summer camps, and eventually college tuition. Despite being a single working mother, I never missed a baseball game or school play. We had a special bond, the kind only forged through shared struggle and unconditional love. Every Sunday was our day. Pancake breakfasts, and afternoon movies, a tradition we maintained even through his teenage years, when most kids want nothing to do with their parents. Michael was always a bright, ambitious child. He worked hard in school, earned a scholarship to college, and went on to law school. I was so proud watching him graduate, knowing all our sacrifices had paid off. He joined a prestigious law firm in Boston, specializing in corporate law. His future seemed so bright, and I couldn't have been happier for him. I remember clearly the day he called to tell me he'd met someone. "Mom, her name is Natalie," he said, his voice filled with excitement I hadn't heard in years. "She's amazing, smart, beautiful, ambitious. I want you to meet her." 2 weeks later, I was sitting across from them at Romano's, Michael's favorite Italian restaurant. Natalie was stunning. Tall and slender, with perfectly styled dark hair and an impeccable designer outfit. Her smile was dazzling, and she had this way of making you feel like the most important person in the room when she focused her attention on you. "Bonnie, it's so wonderful to finally meet you," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Michael talks about you constantly. I feel like I already know you." Throughout dinner, she asked all the right questions about my nursing career, my hobbies, and my relationship with Michael. She laughed at all the embarrassing childhood stories I shared and seemed genuinely interested in our family traditions. By dessert, I was completely charmed. "She seems wonderful," I told Michael when he called the next day. "She is Mom. I think she might be the one." Their courtship was a whirlwind. Within 8 months, Michael proposed with a diamond ring that must have cost 3 months of his salary. I was surprised by the speed, but happy to see my son so in love. When he mentioned that Natalie had suggested a short engagement, I suppressed my concern. After all, when you know right. The wedding was a lavish affair at one of Boston's most exclusive hotels. Natalie's parents, who I learned were wealthy real estate developers from Connecticut, spared no expense. Everything was picture perfect, from the custom-designed gown to the 5-tier cake to the string quartet that played during the ceremony. Natalie was the epitome of the blushing bride, and Michael looked at her like she hung the moon and stars. Throughout the reception, Natalie introduced me to everyone as my wonderful new mother-in-law and kept pulling me into photographs. "We're family now," she whispered, hugging me tight for the camera. I learned more about Natalie that day. Her MBA from Wharton, her successful career as a corporate consultant, her extensive travel around the world. On paper, she was perfect, the ideal match for my accomplished son. Several of Michael's friends commented on how lucky he was to have landed such a catch. The first few months after the wedding seemed idyllic from the outside. They bought a beautiful townhouse in an upscale neighborhood, posted gorgeous vacation photos from Bali, and seemed to be living a charmed life. But I started noticing subtle changes in our relationship. Michael's calls became less frequent. Our Sunday traditions fell by the wayside. When I did speak with him, Natalie was always somehow present, on speakerphone or chiming in from the background. His voice sounded different too, more measured, as if carefully considering each word before speaking. When I invited them for dinner, there was always some reason they couldn't make it. Work commitments, previous engagements, Natalie not feeling well. When they did visit, it was always brief and planned with military precision. "We can stay exactly 90 minutes," Natalie would say, checking her watch as they arrived. "We have reservations at 8. I told myself this was normal. They were newlyweds building their life together. I shouldn't expect to be Michael's priority anymore. Besides, Natalie was so accomplished, so polished. Surely her influence would be good for Michael's career and future. If he seemed a bit anxious, a bit less relaxed in his childhood home, well, that was probably just the pressure of his high-powered job. But there was a moment, just a fleeting instant during one of their visits, when I caught a glimpse of something troubling. Michael had spilled a bit of coffee on the table, and I saw him freeze his eyes, darting immediately to Natalie. The flash of fear in his expression was so brief, I almost thought I'd imagined it. Almost. The first major crack in Natalie's perfect facade appeared at Thanksgiving 6 months after the wedding. I had been looking forward to hosting them in my home, along with my sister Barbara and her husband. I spent days cooking Michael's favorite dishes and making sure everything was perfect. When they arrived, Natalie immediately began a subtle inspection of my home. "Oh, these curtains are vintage, aren't they?" she said, running her fingers along my living room drapes. "And this furniture has such character. They don't make pieces with this much personality anymore." Each comment was delivered with a smile, but carried a clear message my home wasn't up to her standards. Throughout the meal, she made little remarks about the heaviness of traditional Thanksgiving food, questioning the calories in my homemade pumpkin pie, and suggesting modern alternatives for next year. "Maybe we could host next Thanksgiving," she said, glancing meaningfully at Michael. "Our dining room has more space, and I could have my caterer prepare something special." Michael, who had always loved my cooking, said nothing, just nodded and kept his eyes on his plate. I noticed he'd barely touched his wine while Natalie was on her 3rd glass. After dinner, when Michael and I were alone in the kitchen for a moment, I asked if everything was okay. "Everything's fine, Mom," he said quickly, too quickly. "Natalie's just used to a different lifestyle. She doesn't mean anything by it. She seems to have a lot of opinions about how things should be done," I observed carefully. A shadow crossed his face. "She knows what she wants. That's one of the things I love about her." But the tension in his shoulders told a different story. Over the next few months, I made several attempts to bond with Natalie. I invited her to lunch, suggested shopping trips, and even offered to help decorate their new home. Her responses were always polite, but non-committal. On the rare occasions she did agree to meet, she would inevitably cancel at the last minute due to work emergencies. When we did interact, it was like dealing with two different people. The Natalie who existed in public, at family gatherings or social events, was charming and attentive. She would hold my arm, take photos together, and tell everyone how lucky Michael was to have such a sweet mom. But in private, when others weren't around to witness, she was cold and dismissive. She would check her phone during our conversations, sigh heavily when I spoke about family matters, and make comments about how Michael has outgrown his provincial upbringing. The incident at Christmas was what really opened my eyes to the problem. I had invited Michael and Natalie for Christmas Eve dinner, along with Barbara's family. I set the table with my mother's heirloom tablecloth, hand-embroidered linen that had been in our family for generations. Natalie arrived in a sour mood, complaining about traffic and the quaintness of my neighborhood. During dinner, she reached for the wine bottle, and in a movement that seemed deliberately careless, knocked over her full glass of red wine, sending it spreading across the white tablecloth. "Oh no," she said flatly, making no move to help as I jumped up to blot the stain. "How clumsy of me." The look in her eyes as she watched me frantically trying to save the family heirloom told me this was no accident. Michael, instead of helping me, was focused on comforting Natalie, assuring her it was okay. It wasn't okay. None of it was okay. After that night, Michael's absences from family events became the norm rather than the exception. When he did call, it was often from his office, never from home, and he always seemed to be checking the time. I confided my concerns to my sister Barbara during our weekly coffee date. "I hardly see him anymore," I admitted. "And when I do, he's like a different person, anxious, checking his phone constantly as if he's afraid of being caught doing something wrong." Barbara frowned. That sounds like isolation, Bonnie. It's a warning sign in controlling relationships. The abuser cuts their victim off from family and friends, makes them dependent. Abuser. That's a strong word, I protested, though a chill ran through me. Natalie's difficult, sure, but I wouldn't go that far. Just keep your eyes open, Barbara advised. And let Michael know you're always there for him no matter what. My best friend Elaine, a retired social worker, echoed Barbara's concerns when I described the situation to her. Classic controlling behavior, she said firmly. She's systematically cutting him off from his support network. Has he maintained any of his old friendships? I realized with a shock that I didn't know. Michael used to talk about his college buddies and colleagues all the time, but I hadn't heard him mention any of them in months. My worries deepened when Michael stopped by unexpectedly one Saturday afternoon. Natalie was at a business retreat, and he seemed both relieved and guilty about visiting without her knowledge. As he reached for a cookie from the plate, I'd set out his sleeve, rode up, revealing several bruises on his forearm, finger-shaped marks that looked like someone had grabbed him forcefully. "Michael, what happened to your arm?" I asked, my nurse's instincts immediately kicking in. He yanked his sleeve down, face flushing. "Oh, that bumped into a cabinet at home. New furniture, still getting used to the layout." His laugh sounded hollow, rehearsed. Before I could press further, he glanced at his watch and stood abruptly. "I should get going. Natalie will be calling to check in soon." After he left, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, a growing sense of dread settling in my stomach. That night, I spent hours researching controlling relationships and domestic abuse. What I read frightened me. The patterns of isolation, the erosion of self-esteem, the gradual normalization of abusive behavior. Too many elements matched what I was observing in Michael's marriage. The next week, after a minor break-in was reported in my neighborhood, I had security cameras installed, at my front door, back door, and covering the driveway and yard. The security company explained how I could access the footage from my phone or computer. "Better safe than sorry," the installer said as he showed me how the system worked. I had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. Everything changed when I received the call about my brother Lawrence. He had died suddenly of a stroke at 65. Lawrence and I had always been close, even though he had lived across the country in Seattle for most of his adult life. He had never married or had children, building a successful software company instead. What I didn't expect was the contents of his will. Lawrence had left everything to me: his house, his investment portfolio, and a substantial life insurance policy. All told, the inheritance amounted to nearly $750,000. I was stunned by his generosity and heartbroken that I'd never get to thank him. I had always lived modestly. My nurse's salary had been enough to raise Michael and maintain my small home, but not much more. I had some savings for retirement, but nothing substantial. This inheritance would change my financial situation completely. My initial plans were simple and practical. I would set aside a portion to help Michael with a down payment on a larger house now that he and Natalie were talking about starting a family. The rest would secure my retirement and perhaps allow for a few modest luxuries. A kitchen remodel I'd been postponing for years, maybe some travel. I hadn't even told Michael about the inheritance yet when something unexpected happened. Natalie began calling me regularly. She invited me to lunch, asked about my day, and even offered to help organize Lawrence's papers. Her sudden interest in my life was jarring, given her previous indifference. "You must be going through so much right now," she said during one call, her voice dripping with concern. "Why don't you come over for dinner this weekend? I'll cook your favorite meal." I couldn't remember ever telling Natalie what my favorite meal was. When I did visit their home, Natalie was a different person. Attentive, solicitous, helping me with my coat, ensuring my wine glass was never empty. Michael seemed confused by the change, but relieved that the two women in his life were finally getting along. "It's so nice to see you two connecting," he said, squeezing my hand under the table. The questions began casually enough. "Have you thought about what you'll do with Lawrence's house? Or did Lawrence have any investments you'll need help managing?" When I finally mentioned the full extent of the inheritance, I watched Natalie's eyes change, a flash of calculation quickly masked by sympathetic concern. "Bonnie, you shouldn't have to deal with all this financial complexity during your time of grief," she said, reaching for my hand across the dinner table. My firm specializes in wealth management. We could help you invest that money, make it really work for you. That's very kind, I replied carefully, but I have a financial advisor I've worked with for years. He's already helping me sort through everything. Something flickered across Natalie's face, annoyance, maybe even anger, before her smile returned. Of course, I just want what's best for you. Later that week, Michael called to invite me to another dinner at their home. Natalie thinks we should discuss how to protect your new assets, he explained. Estate planning, tax implications, that sort of thing. That's thoughtful, but I've already met with my financial planner and an attorney, I told him. There was a pause. Then Michael's voice lowered. Mom, it would mean a lot to Natalie if you'd let her help with this. She's really trying to connect with you. That Sunday, I was in my home office organizing Lawrence's papers when I overheard Michael and Natalie in my driveway. They'd stopped by unannounced, and I was about to go greet them when Natalie's voice, sharp and angry, made me pause. I don't understand why she's being so stubborn about this, she hissed. That money could solve all our problems if she'd just be reasonable. It's her inheritance, Nat, Michael replied, his voice tired. We can't expect her to just hand it over. Your uncle would have wanted to help us. She's being selfish. The house alone would cover all our debts. Debts. What debts? Michael had never mentioned financial troubles. Their voices moved toward the front door, and I quickly stepped away from the window. Throughout their visit, Natalie was all smiles and solicitous questions, but now I could see the strain around her eyes, the calculation behind every sweet inquiry about my plans for the money. After they left, I called my attorney, Tom Harrington, who had handled Lawrence's will. I explained my concerns and my desire to ensure Michael would benefit from the inheritance, but in a protected way. A trust might be your best option, Tom advised. We can set it up so Michael receives the benefit of the assets, but they remain protected from any potential creditors or divorce settlements. I didn't want to think about divorce settlements, but I couldn't ignore the red flags anymore. We scheduled an appointment for the following week to draw up the paperwork. What I didn't realize was that Natalie had her own plans. 3 days later, she stopped by unexpectedly bearing a homemade cake and asking if she could help sort through some of Lawrence's personal effects that had been shipped from Seattle. You've been so overwhelmed lately, she said. I thought an extra pair of hands might help. I was touched by the gesture and agreed. While we worked in the living room sorting through boxes of Lawrence's books and mementos, Natalie excused herself to use the restroom. She was gone for nearly 15 minutes, long enough that I was about to check on her when she reappeared slightly flushed but smiling. Sorry about that, she said lightly. I got a call from work I had to take. I thought nothing of it at the time. It was only later, after she left, that I noticed my home office door was slightly ajar, though I was certain I'd closed it. When I checked my desk, nothing seemed obviously disturbed, but I had an uneasy feeling. The next day, Natalie called with an invitation that would change everything. Bonnie, I've been thinking about our conversation regarding your inheritance, she said, her voice warm and concerned. I'd love for you to come over tomorrow evening for dinner. Michael will be there and we can discuss some ideas that might benefit everyone. I've done some research I'd like to share. I hesitated, remembering the argument I'd overheard and the mysterious time Natalie had spent in my office. It would mean so much to Michael, she added when I didn't immediately accept. He's been so stressed lately with work. Seeing us getting along better would really lift his spirits. For my son's sake, I agreed. It was a decision I would soon have cause to regret deeply. I arrived at Michael and Natalie's townhouse at exactly 7 p.m. the next evening, a bottle of wine in hand and an increasing sense of unease in my stomach. Natalie answered the door wearing an elegant black dress and a wide smile that didn't reach her eyes. Bonnie, right on time, she said, taking the wine and air-kissing my cheek. Unfortunately, Michael got called into an emergency client meeting. He's so sorry he'll be late, but he insisted we start without him. My internal alarm bells immediately started ringing. Michael missing this dinner seemed too convenient, especially given how Natalie had used his feelings to convince me to come. That's a shame, I said carefully. Maybe we should reschedule when Michael can join us. Nonsense. I've spent all day preparing this meal. Besides, this will give us girls some time to talk privately. Her tone was light, but her grip on my arm as she led me to the dining room was uncomfortably firm. The table was elegantly set with fine china and crystal wine glasses. Natalie poured me a generous glass of red wine and brought out an elaborate appetizer plate. "I hope you're hungry," she said, watching me intently as I took a small sip of wine. The conversation started pleasantly enough. Natalie asked about my week, about Lawrence's possessions, about my plans for returning to volunteer work at the hospital. But I noticed she kept refilling my wine glass while barely touching her own. After serving the main course, an overcooked salmon that she barely apologized for, Natalie abruptly changed the subject. "So, Bonnie, I've been thinking about your inheritance situation," she said, leaning forward. $750,000 is a significant sum to manage on your own." "I'm not on my own," I reminded her. "I have professional advisors." Her smile tightened. "Of course, but advisors charge fees that eat into your returns. I have connections at premier investment firms that could double that money in 5 years." "I appreciate the thought, Natalie, but I'm comfortable with my current plan." "Which is what exactly?" "Letting it sit in some low-yield account." Her voice had an edge now. "That money could be working so much harder." "I'm establishing a trust," I said carefully, "for Michael's future." Something flashed in her eyes. "A trust that seems unnecessarily complicated. Why not just gift it directly? There are tax advantages to consider." "The trust ensures the money will be there for Michael when he needs it," I explained deliberately, not mentioning the protection it would provide from her access. Natalie's facade began to crack. "When he needs it? You mean when you decide he needs it? You're still treating him like a child who can't make his own financial decisions." "That's not true at all." "It is true," she snapped, her voice rising. "You've always controlled him with your guilt and your neediness. Now you're using this money to keep that control." I set down my fork, stunned by the sudden hostility. "I think I should go. We can continue this discussion when Michael is present." Natalie stood blocking my path to the door. "Michael and I have debts you know nothing about. His law firm is downsizing. My consulting contracts have been cut. We need that money now, not in some trust you control." This was news to me. Michael had never mentioned financial troubles or job insecurity. Was it true, or was Natalie manipulating the situation? "If Michael is having financial difficulties, he can talk to me directly," I said, rising from my chair. "I'm always willing to help my son." "Your son," she laughed bitterly. "He's my husband. His loyalty should be to me, not to his mommy. But you've never accepted that, have you?" The conversation was spiraling out of control. I needed to leave before things escalated further. "I'm going to call a cab. Please let Michael know I was sorry to miss him." I gathered my purse and jacket and headed for the staircase that led from their dining area to the front door. Natalie followed close behind me, her anger palpable. "You need to sign the money over to us directly," she demanded. "No trusts, no conditions. We're family. We should be able to make our own decisions about our financial future." I reached the top of the stairs and turned to face her. "Natalie, I want to help Michael, but I'm not comfortable with what you're asking. We can discuss this another time when everyone is calmer." Her expression changed, then a cold calculation replacing the anger. "You know what your problem is, Bonnie. You think you're so important to Michael. You think he needs you, but he doesn't. He has me now." As I turned to descend the stairs, I felt her hands on my back, a hard, deliberate push. There was a moment of weightlessness, of disbelief, and then I was falling. I remember trying to grab the railing but missing. I remember the sickening crack as my arm twisted beneath me on the hardwood landing. I remember the explosion of pain so intense it nearly made me black out. And I remember looking up through a haze of agony to see Natalie standing at the top of the stairs, her face devoid of emotion as she said, "Accidents happen to stubborn old women." She watched me for several seconds, making no move to help, as I gasped in pain. Then, as if flipping a switch, her expression transformed into one of panic and concern. "Oh my God, Bonnie!" she cried out theatrically. "Don't move. I'm calling 911. As I lay there cradling my obviously broken arm, listening to Natalie's performance for the emergency dispatcher, my mother-in-law fell down the stairs. "She's hurt badly. Please hurry." I knew with absolute certainty that my life was in danger as long as Natalie wanted my money. What she didn't know was that the security system I'd mentioned to Michael weeks ago didn't just cover my house. I had installed cameras in my car as well. Cameras that were almost certainly recording her fake panic and the truth of what had just occurred. The paramedics arrived quickly. As they stabilized my arm and prepared me for transport, I made sure to clearly state, "I didn't fall. Natalie pushed me." I repeated it several times, ignoring Natalie's gasps of outrage and claims that I was confused from the pain. By the time we reached the hospital, Michael had been contacted and was waiting in the emergency room, his face pale with worry. Natalie had arrived separately and was already spinning her version of events. "She just lost her balance, Michael," she was saying as I was wheeled in. "You know how unsteady she's been lately. Remember how concerned we've been about her living alone." The look on my son's face was heart-wrenching, torn between believing his mother or his wife. The doctors quickly confirmed what I already knew, a clean break of my radius requiring surgery to set properly. While waiting for the orthopedic surgeon, I insisted on speaking to Michael alone. "She pushed me, Michael," I said once Natalie had been asked to step out. "It wasn't an accident." His face crumpled. "Mom, you're upset and in pain. Natalie would never do something like that." "Check my security cameras," I told him firmly. "The ones in my car. I think they'll show the front of your house, including your staircase window. Check the footage." Michael looked shocked. "You have cameras in your car?" "After the break-ins in my neighborhood. They run whenever the car is parked." I gripped his hand with my good one. "Please, Michael, just check." Before he could respond, a nurse entered to prepare me for surgery, and Natalie slipped back in behind her. As the medication began to take effect, I saw her whispering urgently to Michael, her hand gripping his arm in a way that suddenly seemed less affectionate and more controlling. The last thing I remember before the anesthesia took hold was Michael's troubled gaze and the silent prayer that he would check the camera footage before it was too late. I spent the first week of my recovery at Barbara's house. My surgery had gone well, but the doctors emphasized that proper rest and physical therapy would be crucial for regaining full function in my arm. Barbara, bless her heart, transformed her guest room into a recovery suite and took time off work to help care for me. "You're staying here until you're better," she insisted when I protested about imposing. "Besides, I don't think you should be alone right now." She didn't say what we were both thinking, that if Natalie had tried to harm me once, she might try again. The pain from my broken arm was considerable. Even with medication, certain movements sent sharp stabs of agony through my limb. Physical therapy was excruciating at first. Simple exercises that felt impossible as my damaged muscles and tendons protested. "Range of motion is the priority," my therapist explained during our first session. "It will be painful but necessary if you want to regain full use of your arm." I pushed through the pain, determined not to let Natalie's attack leave me permanently diminished. Each small victory, buttoning my own shirt, holding a coffee mug, turning a doorknob without wincing, felt significant. Michael visited several times during that first week. His visits were awkward tension hanging in the air between us. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the desperate need to believe his wife battling with the growing suspicion that I was telling the truth. Natalie accompanied him, once bringing a gift basket filled with bath products and a card signed, "Get well soon, love Natalie and Michael." Her performance was flawless. Concerned daughter-in-law eyes wide with sympathy, voice gentle as she asked how I was feeling. "I've been so worried about you, Bonnie," she said, perched on the edge of the guest bed. "I keep replaying that awful moment in my mind, seeing you lose your balance." Barbara, who had appointed herself my protector, rarely left the room during their visits and watched Natalie like a hawk. After they left that day, she didn't mince words. "That woman is a sociopath," she declared. "Did you see how she kept touching Michael, keeping him physically tethered to her, and those fake concerned looks she kept giving you chilling?" I had noticed. I'd also noticed how Natalie subtly dominated the conversation repeatedly, mentioning my confusion and unsteadiness before the accident. "Do you think Michael checked the security footage?" Barbara asked. "I don't know. He hasn't mentioned it." During his next solo visit, Michael broached a subject that sent ice through my veins. "Natalie and I have been talking," he said hesitantly. "We're concerned about you living alone after what happened. We've looked into some assisted living options that might be more suitable." "Assisted living?" I echoed in disbelief. "Michael, I'm 62, not 92. I broke my arm because your wife pushed me, not because I'm incapable of caring for myself." He flinched. "Mom, please. The doctor said confusion is common after trauma. You might be misremembering what happened." "I'm not confused or misremembering anything," I said firmly. "Have you checked the camera footage like I asked?" He looked away. "I couldn't find any cameras in your car." Was he lying? Had Natalie gotten to the cameras first? Or had the system failed to record before I could press further? Michael's phone buzzed. He checked the text message and stood abruptly. "Natalie needs me home. I have to go." I watched him leave, fear knotting my stomach. If Michael believed Natalie's version of events, if he thought I was becoming mentally confused, what would stop them from trying to gain control of my finances? Or worse, trying again to accidentally remove me from the picture permanently? On the 10th day after my surgery, Detective Lisa Carson from the Boston Police Department came to see me. She was a compact woman in her 40s, with observant eyes and a no-nonsense manner, Mrs. Clark. "I'm following up on the report you made regarding the incident at your son's home," she said after introducing herself. "You stated that your daughter-in-law deliberately pushed you down the stairs." "That's correct," I confirmed, sitting straighter in the armchair where I'd been reading. "It wasn't an accident." Detective Carson took detailed notes as I recounted everything: the inheritance, Natalie's sudden interest in my finances, the dinner invitation, and finally the deliberate push that sent me tumbling down the staircase. "And you mentioned security cameras to the responding officers," she asked. "Yes, I have a system installed in my car. It might have captured what happened through the front window of my son's house." Detective Carson's expression remained neutral. "We've retrieved that footage, Mrs. Clark." My heart jumped. "You have... What does it show?" "I can't discuss the details of an ongoing investigation," she said carefully. "But I can tell you we're taking your allegations very seriously." She asked several more questions about my relationship with Natalie and Michael, about the inheritance, and about any previous incidents that had concerned me. As she prepared to leave, Detective Carson paused. "Mrs. Clark, was your daughter-in-law aware of your home security system? I mentioned it to my son a few weeks ago. Why? We found something interesting in the footage from your home cameras. On the day before your incident, someone entered your property and spent approximately 20 minutes inside your house." My blood ran cold. "Someone broke in." "The person used a key," Detective Carson clarified. "Your daughter-in-law visited you that day, correct, to help sort through your brother's belongings?" "Yes, but she was with me the whole time except—" I trailed off, remembering. "Except when she went to use the restroom. She was gone for quite a while." Detective Carson nodded. "Our tech team enhanced the footage. Your daughter-in-law can be clearly seen entering your home office and photographing documents on your desk with her phone." I felt suddenly ill. My trust paperwork. The draft was on my desk. "Mrs. Clark, there's more," Detective Carson said gravely. "We've obtained Ms. Wilson's phone records. There are several text messages to an unknown number discussing plans to, and I quote, handle the old lady problem." The room seemed to spin around me. It was one thing to suspect Natalie had deliberately harmed me, another entirely to hear confirmation that she had been planning it. "What happens now?" I asked. "We've shared this evidence with your son," Detective Carson said. "He was distressed. He provided a statement about your daughter-in-law's recent behavior that corroborates some of your concerns." Michael had finally seen the truth. Relief and sadness washed over me in equal measure. "Ms. Wilson will be arrested today on charges of assault and attempted elder financial exploitation," Detective Carson continued. "Given the evidence, this case will likely be prosecuted quite seriously." After she left, I sat for a long time, my injured arm throbbing in time with my heartbeat. The confirmation that Natalie had deliberately tried to harm me should have been validating. Instead, I felt only grief. For Michael, for the family I thought we were building for the future that had been shattered as surely as the bones in my arm. Later that afternoon, Michael arrived looking haggard and shell-shocked. Without a word, he knelt beside my chair and laid his head in my lap, sobbing like the little boy he had once been. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he choked out between sobs. "I should have believed you. I should have protected you." I stroked his hair with my good hand, my own tears falling. "It's not your fault," I told him, though part of me wanted to shake him for his blindness. "She manipulated both of us." When he finally calmed enough to speak coherently, Michael revealed the full extent of Natalie's deception. Their perfect life had been largely an illusion. They were deeply in debt, partly from their extravagant lifestyle that exceeded even Michael's substantial income, but mostly from Natalie's secret gambling problem that he had only recently discovered. "She had credit cards I didn't know about," he said hollowly. "Loans from people I've never met. When she heard about Uncle Lawrence's inheritance, she saw it as the solution to everything." "Why didn't you come to me?" I asked. "I would have helped you." "I was ashamed," he admitted. "And Natalie convinced me that asking for help would disappoint you. She said you'd always seen me as the successful son, and learning about our financial problems would crush you." Just one of many ways she had driven wedges between us. As painful as this revelation was, it marked the beginning of healing. For my arm, for my relationship with Michael, and for his own journey out of Natalie's web of manipulation and control. Natalie's arrest made local headlines, "Prominent consultant charged with elder abuse and assault." The story picked up additional traction when the police investigation uncovered more of Natalie's secrets. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks after her arrest. During that time, discoveries about her past emerged that stunned everyone who thought they knew her. Natalie's perfect resume, partially fabricated. She had attended Wharton but had been placed on academic probation and never completed her MBA. Her prestigious consulting firm was largely a one-woman operation with an impressive website and virtual office address. Most shocking was the revelation that Michael wasn't her first target. An ex-boyfriend from Chicago came forward after seeing news of her arrest. 2 years earlier, he had ended their relationship after discovering she had systematically drained his savings account and taken out loans in his name. He had chosen not to press charges at the time, wanting to avoid public embarrassment. "I should have reported her," he told the prosecutor handling Natalie's case. "Maybe this wouldn't have happened to someone else if I had." There were others, too. A former employer who had fired her for expense account fraud, a roommate whose identity she had briefly assumed to obtain credit cards. A pattern of financial manipulation and exploitation that stretched back years. Natalie maintained her innocence throughout, claiming I had fabricated the assault accusation to prevent her from accessing family money that rightfully should have been shared with Michael. She insisted the security camera footage had been doctored, that the incriminating texts had been misinterpreted, that the former boyfriend was a jilted lover seeking revenge. Michael filed for divorce immediately after her arrest. "I don't recognize the person revealed in these investigations," he told me. "I don't think I ever really knew her at all." The district attorney offered Natalie a plea deal, given the overwhelming evidence against her. She rejected it, apparently confident in her ability to charm a jury, just as she had charmed so many others. It was a miscalculation. The security footage was damning, clearly showing her deliberate push and her cold observation as I lay injured. The text messages revealed premeditation, and my testimony, delivered with the simple dignity of truth, resonated with the jury. I spoke not just of the physical pain of my injury, but of the deeper wounds. The betrayal of trust, the fear for my son, the shock of realizing someone had entered my life with the deliberate intention of harm. Elder abuse isn't just about physical injury, I told the courtroom. It's about using age as a weapon, assuming that older people are confused, expendable, easy targets. It's about betting that family members will dismiss our concerns as confusion or paranoia. It's insidious, and it's devastating. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, seemed particularly affected by my words. When it came time for sentencing after Natalie's conviction, she did not hold back. "Ms. Wilson, you have exhibited a calculated pattern of predatory behavior targeting vulnerable individuals for financial gain," the judge stated. Your assault on Mrs. Clark was not a momentary lapse in judgment, but the culmination of a carefully orchestrated plan to exploit and ultimately eliminate an obstacle to your financial goals. The court cannot ignore the cold-bloodedness with which you pushed an elderly woman down a flight of stairs and watched her suffer before calling for help. Natalie was sentenced to 8 years in prison for elder abuse assault and attempted financial fraud. As she was led away, she looked back once her eyes meeting mine with such hatred that I actually flinched. Michael was devastated, but determined to rebuild his life. He began therapy to understand how he had been manipulated and to address the patterns that had made him vulnerable to someone like Natalie. "I ignored so many red flags," he admitted during one of our conversations. "The way she isolated me, controlled our finances, made me doubt my own perceptions. Classic abuser tactics. I just couldn't see it because it didn't fit my image of what abuse looks like." As my arm healed and my strength returned, I made a decision. I would use a portion of Lawrence's inheritance to establish a foundation focused on elder abuse awareness and prevention. The Bonnie Clark Foundation for Elder Protection was born from the pain of my experience, but focused on helping others avoid similar situations. I began speaking at community centers and retirement communities, sharing my story and educating seniors about recognizing and reporting abuse. Local news stations interviewed me, spreading the message further. Financial exploitation of seniors amounts to billions of dollars annually, I explained during one interview. And that's just what gets reported. So many victims stay silent out of shame or fear or because they're not believed. To my surprise, I found my voice growing stronger with each retelling of my story. What had begun as personal trauma was transforming into a mission, one that gave purpose to my pain and meaning to my recovery. 2 years after that terrible night when Natalie pushed me down the stairs, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. My arm had fully healed, though it still ached during cold weather, a permanent reminder of how quickly life can change. The Bonnie Clark Foundation had grown from a small local initiative to a respected organization with 3 full-time employees and dozens of volunteers. We provided resources for seniors-trained law enforcement in recognizing elder abuse and advocated for stronger protective legislation. I had testified before the state legislature in support of a bill increasing penalties for financial exploitation of elders, using my own experience as powerful testimony. Michael had healed too in his own way. The divorce from Natalie had been finalized within a year. He had sold the townhouse, unable to live comfortably in the space where so much deception had occurred. His therapy had helped him recognize the patterns of control and manipulation that had characterized his relationship with Natalie, and he was determined not to repeat those mistakes. Most significantly, he had shifted his legal career focus. Once a corporate attorney, he now specialized in representing elder abuse victims, particularly in cases of financial exploitation. "I couldn't prevent what happened to you," he told me, "but I can help others fight back." Our relationship had deepened through the shared trauma and recovery. The artificial distance Natalie had created was gone, replaced by a more mature connection built on mutual respect and honest communication. Our Sunday dinners had resumed, though now they often included discussion of case strategies or foundation initiatives alongside more personal conversation. The anniversary of the attack was approaching, and I had decided to transform it from a day of painful memories to one of celebration and awareness. The foundation was hosting its first annual fundraising gala, bringing together advocates, survivors, and supporters to raise money for our growing programs. "Are you nervous about speaking?" Michael asked as we finalized plans for the event. "A little," I admitted, "but it feels right to reclaim this day, to turn it into something positive." The gala exceeded all expectations. More than 300 people attended, including Detective Carson, who had become a strong supporter of our educational programs for law enforcement. When I took the stage to deliver the keynote address, I looked out at the sea of faces. Some survivors like myself, others family members, professionals, and advocates, and felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. 2 years ago today, I lay at the bottom of a staircase with a broken arm victim to someone I had welcomed into my family. I began. I could never have imagined that moment of pain would lead to this room, to this community, to this purpose. I spoke about the lessons I had learned, about trusting my instincts, about the importance of independence, about recognizing the tactics abusers use to isolate and control their victims. Elder abuse thrives in silence and isolation, I told the audience. By sharing our stories, by refusing to be shamed into silence, we break that power. Every time someone recognizes the warning signs because of our work, every time a senior citizen finds the courage to seek help, every time a family member believes their elderly parents' concerns instead of dismissing them as confusion, we win. The standing ovation that followed brought tears to my eyes. Afterward, a line of people waited to speak with me, many sharing their own experiences with elder abuse or expressing gratitude for the Foundation's work. One woman, probably in her 70s, gripped my hands tightly. "My daughter's husband was doing exactly what you described, isolating her, controlling their finances, turning her against me. After hearing you speak last month at the community center, I recognized what was happening. We got her out. We got help. You saved her life." Those words, "You saved her life," echoed in my mind long after the gala ended. What Natalie had intended as an act of destruction had instead created a ripple effect of protection and prevention that was helping countless others. Michael and I had received a letter the previous week from the parole board. Natalie was coming up for her first parole hearing, though the likelihood of early release was slim given the nature of her crimes and her lack of remorse. The letter had briefly reopened old wounds, but I refused to let it diminish the joy of our accomplishments. "What do you think Uncle Lawrence would say about all this?" Michael asked as we shared a quiet moment at the end of the evening. I smiled, thinking of my practical, generous brother. He'd probably say it was a better investment than he could have imagined. His money didn't just secure our futures, it's helping protect others. In the months that followed, our work continued to expand. I was invited to speak at national conferences on elder abuse. The Foundation established a legal aid fund to help seniors who couldn't afford representation in exploitation cases. Michael helped develop a training program for attorneys specializing in elder law. The trust I had established with Lawrence's inheritance now partially funded these initiatives while still providing for Michael's future. He had met someone new, Kate, a kind-hearted family law attorney who treated me with genuine warmth and respect. Their relationship was developing, slowly built on honest communication and healthy boundaries. As for me, I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed. At 64, I was more active, more engaged with the world, and more purposeful than I had been in decades. The broken arm that had seemed so devastating had ultimately led to healing of a different kind, not just of bone and sinew, but of spirit and purpose. The security cameras that had captured Natalie's crime had done more than ensure justice in one case. They had launched a mission that was protecting countless elders from similar harm. In trying to break me, Natalie had inadvertently helped build something far stronger than what existed before. Have you or someone you love experienced elder abuse or financial exploitation? The signs can be subtle, and many victims suffer in silence out of shame or fear. Please share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else recognize their own situation. If this video resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories of survival and justice. And please share this video with anyone who might benefit from hearing this message. Remember, awareness is our strongest weapon against abuse. Thank you for being part of this community where we turn our painful experiences into protection for others.